Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Joshua Nicholson. He is the Director, Incident Response Services over at Surefire Cyber. Welcome, Joshua.
Well, thanks for having me, Pete.
Thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on yourself and your career thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. So 24 years of experience, hands-on keyboard, technical security engineer. Started off in the Marine Corps, communication electronics, went into network administration, sysadmin, before about 2001, dedicating my career towards cyber. Fell in love with that. Was a pen tester, security engineer, and then incident responder, while managing and doing work for like Ernst & Young, Wells Fargo, risk management. So I had the combination of highly technical background as well as risk management controls. But right now I work for a company called Surefire Cyber, and we do pure incident response. We're the guys that get called when big companies get hacked into, and we're the ones that help get companies back up and running where they need to be. And so we do that through a number of different services. So the cool thing is that we get to deal with threat actors and cybersecurity issues every day. And so that's pretty much my job in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've had pretty deep roots in the DFIR world for a while now, and have worked with quite a few of the consulting firms out there. So certainly be interested to get your thoughts on how hiring has evolved in DFIR specifically. But I guess we'll start with the talent gap, as is the namesake of the show. Do you think the talent gap in security is a real thing? And if so, what would you say it looks like?
Yeah, there's definitely a talent gap. There's also a skill gap, is that there's so many different technologies and tools that are out there. Just look at myself. I've touched so many over the last 24 years, yet they're moving to things in cloud and IAM solutions and technologies you just don't see or have to deal with too often. And so, yeah, there's a huge skill gap that recruiters are trying to navigate. At the same time, you have to ask yourself, what do you specialize in? Being too much of a generalist and having too broad of it really, I find, is difficult for the recruiters and the hiring managers to figure out if you're a fit in that area. So I do see that is happening. Somebody chase some unexpected or unrealistic expectations is one thing you were saying before, whereas I want someone who's got cloud, I want someone who's got AI, and they got 10 years of experience. And they're just AI hasn't been around in 10 years. So there's some resumes, and I do notice this. This is interesting. I was talking to you about this, but I notice a difference sometimes in ways people look at job descriptions. I think I see some people that look at a job description and see that they're missing one of the elements there that they're asking, and then don't apply at all. Think it doesn't match to them. And then you see some people, like even myself, will apply towards things that we're not a total match for. Things are missing, yet that would still hit. We would still get a phone call for it. I think there's a lot of people who kind of X themselves out of a market or of a job just because they see one or two things on that resume that they don't have. And then they feel, okay, well, they're not going to want me. I'm not going to even apply. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's certainly and it's even a gendered difference too, because
I was going to say that. I didn't know if you noticed that. I didn't know if it was a gender or a personality trait that I just see prevalent in genders, different genders. Like women, I notice will see that job description, and if it's not matching them precisely, they won't apply. I know because I've just seen it so many times. My wife is one of them. And then when a guy will go, I don't have those three, but I got 4 or 5, and I bet you I can convince them I can do the other 2. And they go for it, and a lot of times get the job.
Yeah, there's actually some research to support that. I don't know exactly what the study was, but I know it exists out there. And I think a lot of these issues could be solved by just better job descriptions, defaulting to only having 2 to 5 must-have requirements versus a list of 10 or 15 must-haves and then 10 or 15 nice-to-haves. I think if you had a very short list of must-haves and then maybe a longer list of nice-to-haves, that would be more clear for everybody. But a lot of these things get thrown in together, and you end up with these giant job descriptions that no single person can match. And if they do potentially match that role, they're going to be super expensive in a lot of cases. And in a candidate-heavy market like we're in today, if each open job is getting 500 or 1,000 applicants, even if the job description is really long, has a lot of requirements, the vast majority of those people are not going to be qualified. And you talk to any internal recruiter, they'll tell you, yeah, I'll get maybe 5-10% of the people that apply for the role are qualified, out of, potentially hundreds or thousands of applicants. So I think the whole reliance on inbound applications is really causing a lot of issues, especially in a market where volume is becoming more and more prevalent on the application side. People starting to figure out how to use automation to apply to way more jobs than they would have been able to 5 years ago. And then on the, internal side, you have recruiters that are, using more advanced ATSs to screen for keywords and rank people based on those keywords. So there's just not a lot of people talking to people as much anymore, ironically, as the technology gets better. And I think a lot of the issues would be solved with more, more targeted types of recruiting efforts and more, just having more human conversations. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I think there's a difference when you're talking about normal recruiting versus executive search. Like I have to deal with executive search and a lot of those type of positions for C-suite and so forth. Those guys seem to operate by relationship only. They get to know you for a while. They have several discussions. They may know you for months while you're at another company, just for the off chance that something's going to come up and they can position you for a CEO, a VP, or some role like that. And so what I notice they do a lot more personal events. Like they'll go on the sidelines of RSA and they want to meet with you and talk with you. And it's just a continuous conversation until some opportunity comes up. Versus, I don't know if recruiters do that at other levels. It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be, here's my pool of candidates. This is what I'm trying to match. Let me put the two together as I see fit. But it seems like the executive search teams definitely spend a lot more time on getting to know each other. And it's not application driven. It's more of relationship. You worked here. Who do you know type thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think most hiring in security should be at least somewhat relationship driven. It's a very, trust heavy industry, obviously. And if you can't trust somebody, you don't want to hire them. So that's certainly what I found as a recruiter myself going for new clients. They're looking for some sort of warm intro or somebody else that recommends you. And in hiring, that's extremely valuable as well. Even at the mid-level these days, I think a lot of internal recruiting teams do rely on those inbound applications, but a lot of people that end up getting the jobs are the ones that happen to know the hiring manager from some event or previous relationship, maybe worked together in the past. So that's what I've been telling folks on the job seeking side is just network your heart out right now. Because if you're just blind applying to positions, you're not going to have a very good time. I think you had put out a post recently about that on the job seeking side.
Yeah, I do a lot of networking events as well, just for many reasons, not just for jobs and talent, but for business. And I attend the ISC Square community events, which is once a month. You also have ISACA. There's a number of different other organizations, and you want to show up to them. Those guys are leaders in cybersecurity programs, and they know who's hiring, who has what, and so forth. A lot of times when I see a job and there's a lot of people that applied to it when I'm in the market, I'm not in the market now, obviously, but when I'm in the market, you would see a job that a lot of people applied to, and you immediately be put off, especially if it says 100 applicants. Well, it's like, golly, no one's going to look at my application, even though I'm very much qualified for it. There's hundreds that have already applied. So one of the things is that what I find is if you hit up the recruiter that posted it, you could see who posted that job and build a relationship, try to build a relationship that way. It gives you some insight into that post that you might not know about beforehand. Or if there's a position that you're interested in, it came out quick. So I definitely would have the filters set up. So when something comes out, you can apply quickly to it, not be the 200th person applying to it. But how do you go around the periphery? How do you use LinkedIn to find the recruiting manager, to find other people that work at that organization? I had this was a while back. This was a job I was interviewing for CrowdStrike, and I happened to know 2 or 3 people, senior VPs over at CrowdStrike. So I was able to get the land of what is this job application? What is this job for? What does it do? Who's it report to? and they gave me details I never would have known from an HR perspective. So I definitely think it's important to use your network. And even if it's somebody you don't know too well, but that does work there, you can hit them up and talk to them. So I think getting a lay of the land on an organization and be strategic about it versus the shotgun approach going across the place definitely can help. And I'd say here in Charlotte, they have several different networking events that for IT, for cybersecurity, there's a lot that are there. And all it takes is you going to those events, talking to people, connecting on LinkedIn, telling them what you're looking for, what are they looking for, so that because they're all in the same boat. They're either looking for employment or they're just looking to make connections within their career. So I do think it's important to do those networking events. Make sure you have a suit and tie, or at least you're dressed professionally and so forth, because you're an image of what you would represent to them if they were to pass you on. If they'd have passed you on to another company or another person in the company, they're going to be judged by the way you look and the way you handle yourself. So I think it's always important to be professional. Your LinkedIn, you and I had talked about this in the past, is that having that LinkedIn that has a professional picture, looks like you post from time to time. I find human nature is one thing. You have recruiters that post things out there on LinkedIn. Well, there's no reason you can't hit a like. You can't hit a comment for visibility. What that does is a recruiter now sees your name, sees your profile. And they may go, hey, I just saw that person posted on this. Hey, I may have some other role here that I'm going to reach out to them about. And so to me, it's just the same way you would want to be treated, you want to treat others. If you're going to change a position, you change job roles, and you go announce it on LinkedIn, of course, you want everybody to hit like and comment and great job. Ain't that awesome? There's a personal need to feel validated on that. Well, do that with others. Validate others' posts, respond to theirs, put comments in there, be thoughtful about it, and be sincere. Don't be obviously doing it for some alternative reasons. But once you care enough about people and you start responding to those posts, I think you get more traction and it's easier to actually get ingrained into the community.
Yeah, I think visibility and being top of mind are super important right now. Attention is currency, essentially. So, us recruiters, obviously we get paid by the hiring company. So we may not always have a perfect match for the job seeker. But if you're a job seeker, you still want to connect with us, because if you're top of mind and you're commenting with our posts, same thing with hiring managers, you will be top of mind when we do potentially get that right role. And if we can go to somebody that we've interacted with before, that we were impressed with their insight about, that's a good story for us recruiters to tell the hiring manager. Look, I've been engaging with this person for a couple of years. They've shared some really good insights. They have a good professional LinkedIn presence. I don't see them complaining on LinkedIn constantly, which is a big one these days. That's a huge feather in your cap. So yeah, having those, like you said, personal connections and I think emotional human connections with people, more important today in the market that we're in, with all this noise and competition and all of that, than it really ever has been before. What about? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I completely agree. I think your reputation is everything about yourself as well. And if you're not the person that likes to build relationships, like I meet with customers every week, even new ones. And when I do, hey, I send them a LinkedIn. Hey, it was nice to meet you. Glad we were able to connect. And you're building your network as you move forward. And I think there's a lot of those traits. Like I'm a big reader, right? I read a lot. The Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and Influence People, Good to Great. Raving Fan was another one. How do you make a fan or a customer just raving, and everywhere they go, they bring you. And so there's these books that have captured this wonderful knowledge, and it's available to all of us. You just have to be able to read it. And once you start to read through those types of books and you understand other people's perspective, you'll even understand the recruiter's perspective. Like, what is that recruiter looking to get, and what are they looking to fill, and so forth. And once you understand someone else's perspective, that is huge. It really ties into everything from job seeking to delivering properly. Seeing someone else's perspective and adjusting your pitch towards that makes all the reason in the world. You said one thing I see is important. Facebook is for personal rants. LinkedIn is for professional posting. Okay. If you start talking about politics and everything that's happening in the political world right now, which is crazy disaster. You start putting that on LinkedIn, and you're going to have a lot of job prospects just completely stay away from you. You'd be like kryptonite because they look at those. Your LinkedIn is
and anybody who's put off by that type of posting won't necessarily tell you that that's the case. So you don't even know that the evaporation of the jobs is happening. It just kind of happens in the background too.
Oh, and I've been on the phone with the recruiters. They were like, they're posting political stuff all over LinkedIn. Now they would associate our brand to that political statement or whatever it is. And that shows poor judgment and puts us in a bad light. So go rant about politics on Facebook, leave LinkedIn alone, and try not to cross the two worlds. Like people I work with, I don't add to Facebook until after I don't work with them anymore. And I want to be friends on a personal level with them. But other than that, I don't cross the two worlds because those perceptions of you can play into someone else's bias and you don't get a job. All because of a misconception or because of one of those preconceived biases. And I've just seen job offers pulled because they're like, golly, this person doesn't have the maturity to know not to post that kind of stuff. And some of it's innocuous. You could say, hey, the administration is changing this new route and it could impact us here. So essentially, we're talking about having that professional LinkedIn profile, hitting up the recruiter that posted the job, hitting like and comment on other people's content that they post. And I think having the opportunity to get really succinct on who you are as a person, what your skills and what your elevator pitch, so to speak. So when you're talking to that recruiter and you've applied for a job that's network engineer, for instance, you want to make sure that you've read the job description, you understand the technology that are there, and then follow it up. I learned this little trick is follow it up as once you've had the interview and you answer the questions and they say, for instance, tell me a little bit about your network engineering background. And you start to go into the different things you have done for companies, right? I would focus on those big projects that you've helped deliver and be a part of versus smaller certifications. It's more about your outcome than it is about your academic accomplishments, because the academic accomplishments are supposed to help give you great outcomes. So if that's worked, you should have great experience in some of these projects. And then end it all with, that's why I thought I was a great candidate for this position. When they ask you about a question about a certain role, you answer that, but then at the end, just say, that's why I thought I was a great candidate for this role. And it's the subliminal. We want to be able to have that recruiter think this person is the right person for this role. And because he just heard it. So it is a little psychological, but it is something I think is important when you're interviewing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and something I do as a recruiter that the candidates can do as well is ask about what the person's looking for in this placement. So as a recruiter, I would ask, what are you looking for in your next job to the candidate? A candidate can ask, what are you really looking for in this new hire? Are there certain skill sets that are, usually what you're looking for? Or is there anything that other candidates don't have that you've talked to in the past that you really need to have in this position, that sort of thing. And any good hiring manager or recruiter is going to be impressed with that sort of question because it's not one that they typically get. So asking follow-up questions, having deeper questions, having a conversation. I think a lot of interviews tend to get sidetracked when it becomes like a strict Q&A type approach. And my favorite hiring managers of all time had very conversational interview styles. So that's just kind of a best practice.
Relating to the people, I think it's always important when you're kind of going over who you are and what you do and what you kind of fit in with, is just to have some of those demonstrative capabilities like we were talking about of saying, this is the outcome I've had at this other company. I've had this as well. But at the same token, I think it's important to talk about adaptability and how do you handle new things and then work with other people. I think that's always a critical aspect, is that that you're not going to know it all and you're going to have to use other team members and work for them. And so I think keying in on this, I'm a team player mentality is what a lot of people are looking for. And they're looking for self-motivated people. You don't have to motivate them. They come to work every day proud to be there and so forth. So I highlight those kind of capabilities. Now, you may also want to during that interviewing process, right? Highlight some things you know about the company. I think it's always important if you're interviewing for Bank of America, well, you ought to know a lot about Bank of America, right? Go research and go understand it. I think it gets a little frustrating for some recruiters when I see them on the phone and the client knows not, or the candidate knows nothing about the job. They know nothing about the company. They know nothing about nothing. And you kind of have to start all over, even though they saw the job description, they know what they should have read it. They should have known everything about it. It just feels like there's not enough attention towards it. I have a job I'm trying to fill. You have a need for this job. All you need to do is read that job description, take it seriously, do some research, and be prepared to have that conversation with that company. Because in the end, the recruiter, when they're going in front of their customer, they don't want to get embarrassed by bringing in a candidate that doesn't know what they're doing, can't speak right, can't relate to their skills being the right one for this position. And it makes the recruiter look like he's an idiot because he didn't set up the right candidate for this. So you're not going to get the recruiter to move you on to the next stage if you don't obviously get past them. So I think those pieces are important. How are you going to represent the recruiter as you move forward? I think it's also important to be honest. If you have some requirement that, I have to be at daycare every Wednesday at 3 or something like that, talk about some of those things as it may impact the job. But then in some of them, there's just too much detail. Don't worry about it. Don't get into it. Wait till you get job offer. So I think those are some key elements and some key parts there. I think it's important also to start off every interview personally. This is where I'm at. I'm in that city I'm in and what's going on from that aspect. Because what will happen is that we're all people. We want to relate to someone. And if there's some commonality, like I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. So I will drop that from time to time in conversations with a recruiter or something, because you never know. Hey, my grandfather was a Marine, or this one was that, or I love the military, whatever it is. You're trying to spark a connection between you and the recruiter, and it feels like you have some commonality. You're on some great understanding. And then I think it's much better for them to be able to present you to their clients. So it's almost like a double sales process. And you got to be able to sell the recruiter, and the recruiter's got to feel comfortable enough to pass you on that you won't misinterpret them or embarrass them in the recruiting process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would say it's really hard to do too much research on the front end. You want to be as prepared as you can going into even a recruiter screen, but definitely an interview. Definitely when you're speaking with the hiring manager, picking up on their LinkedIn profile, figuring out if there's anything you guys have in common prior to the conversation, something that you could just kind of drop in there. Rapport building it's not just a sales tactic. It's, something that's important for recruiters, candidates, hiring managers. A lot of hiring managers I've talked to that are really good, I think, at interviewing and hiring people. They'll be specific in making sure that they do some rapport building with a candidate as well, just to help them get a little bit less nervous so that they're actually getting the best out of that person. I've seen some interview processes where it's almost like they're trying to trip somebody up, and they're actually looking for a way to disqualify somebody versus trying to get the best out of that person. What do you think about the hiring side? Like, what are some things that good hiring managers might do well?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So you're essentially asking what can hiring managers do better in the interviewing process for their customers? I think I don't know how advantageous this would be in the whole process, but I definitely think one thing is I would love to know what the questions are ahead of time, just so I can formulate a proper response with actual detailed information related. So like, if you're going to ask me a detailed question about this project that's very similar on my resume to something else there, if I knew that ahead of time, I can make sure I had a proper response. If I don't ahead of time, I will give you a response, but it's not going to nearly be the quality. And I'm going to do what everybody else does, going, crap, I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that. I forgot to say, I can't believe I didn't tell them about this. So I think it prepares someone very similar to like when I'm with a customer and I'm trying to prepare them for a sale, and we're going to sell this incident response package, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, of just framing it, right? Framing the issue and framing the conversation and so forth with them. But yeah, so I think those are some of the techniques: is to be open, be honest, be good on that elevator pitch, and just keep it friendly. So yeah. I also think timeliness is huge. I see this with recruiters. Is like if they're reaching out for a client, respond. Don't take 2-3 days for that. I find recruiters will deal with people that not only are qualified but are responsive and will move quickly. And if you need an interview by Thursday, hey, I'm going to try and do everything I can to be there by that Thursday. Oh, you need something from more information on this resume? I'm going to get you as quickly as possible. So I find that if you look to make the recruiter's job easier and you're more responsive, there's a much higher probability that they represent you in that job. Is that correct? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's an old saying in sales that time kills all deals.
Yeah.
And in my experience, that's very much true, both from the hiring manager's perspective as well as the candidate's perspective. If a hiring manager is taking too long to let the recruiter know what the feedback is after the interview, and thus the recruiter isn't getting back to the candidate, and it's been a couple of weeks, that candidate starts to get really antsy, even if they felt like the last interview went very well. But then on the candidate side, or on the hiring manager side, if somebody's taking the entire amount of time allotted to accept that offer and they're waiting till the very last second, there are all sorts of things going on in that hiring manager's head, like, oh, does that person have another offer? Or did we come in too low on the salary? Or, whatever. Our minds tend to fill in the blanks, and not always with the most positive scenarios when there's an unknown. So, yeah, I think defaulting to giving people more information is generally better. They feel more comfortable with that. It seems more, transparent. Which is why I'm a huge fan of that in the interview process. And to your point about, having the questions ahead of time, I haven't worked with a hiring manager that's done that, but I could certainly see where that might be valuable. You could also, I guess, make the argument that if they're provided the questions ahead of time on the candidate side, it gives them an opportunity to kind of fluff up or over-index on certain experiences and or figure out a way to dodge the question, that sort of thing, when that's tougher to do when you're put on the spot.
You can see them do that, though, where it was like a prepared answer versus they just were able to clear the. Yeah, but I see what you're getting at. But I think you can actually detect it when it's like they're not answering the question; they're coming up with some crazy story. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and you had mentioned sort of self-motivation earlier. I think one thing that often hiring managers look for as well is not just self-motivation, like, are they going to motivate themselves to where I don't have to micromanage them constantly, but they're also looking for internal locus of control. So if they ask somebody, hey, do you have experience in X, Y, and Z SIM? And they don't, they would want to hear, I haven't worked with that particular one, but here's another one that I've worked with, and here's what I would do to learn about it. Showing that it's not on somebody else to teach me everything. I need to take my own career and my own opportunities into my own hands.
It's crazy that you said the internal locus of control. So they train that in the military, in the Marine Corps. They train you to have an internal locus of control because the lowest ranked people are hitting the beach first. Well, they have to make decisions quickly and fast, and they have to take charge of the situation. They can't wait for commanders to come on the beach and start barking orders. That's how the Russian military is set up. That's why they're so ineffective in so many different ways. But how do you actually teach you that once you hit that beach, move on to the next objective, take charge of this, have a forward-looking in charge mentality versus an external locus of control as well. You just say, I'm not in control of anything. It's just whatever happens. I have no control of my career or any of these other things. And I think that's completely false. So these people that sit in this situation and they think they have no control over things when they have a tremendous amount of control to shape their destiny. But they do need to take it into their own hands and not just rely on others. So, but I thought it was interesting you said that because that's the term they use in the military, the internal and external locus of control.
Yeah, it was something that I learned, ironically, in business school, talking about, I think it was like organizational psychology or something was the course. And that always interested me, what motivates people. So I guess that's a good question for you. If you're evaluating a candidate, what would some I guess, like green flag motivators be, and like what would some red flag motivators be?
Yeah.
Reasons why they might be interested in your company or your job.
No, I think that's great. Great question. I think a green flag is definitely someone who asks very good questions. That's really the sign of intelligence, is the asking of very good questions that really make you change the perspective or what you were thinking. I like to turn an interview into they're trying to recruit me rather than me. I'm trying to convince them that I should have the job. So when you start to turn it from where they're selling you the job versus you asking what it's all entail, I think that it changes the control dynamics. So I'll give you an example. So if I'm talking to someone and there's we're interviewing here and they start asking different questions, I've answered and they said, do you have any answers for me? Well, this is where that research comes into play. Well, I see y'all are in these different business lines and I see different things here, but I don't see how y'all going to go after this market. Or tell me this, do you have a plan on how do you grow people? I mean, I do notice an investment in employees tend to really come out into the future. So what are your plans towards that? So what I find you're doing is you're asking these maturity questions of how the company handles its human resources and how it drives some of that. And it asks these really pointed questions that now the recruiter is going to be asking, or the HR rep or whoever's at that is going to be selling you. Oh yeah, we have a 401k plan and we match dollar for dollar here. And then we have educational reimbursement because that's important. So I find putting the recruiter into the role of having to sell me the job versus tell me a little bit about yourself and leaving the entire control in the recruiter's hand on whether I'm qualified or not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's always going to be some give and take, and a good recruiter is going to understand that they need to provide plenty of information, as well as asking plenty of information. So it's certainly a two-way street. So yeah, absolutely. What about I talk a lot about the entry level problem that we have in the industry right now.
Yeah.
We have tens of thousands of people looking to break into the industry, and seemingly a very, very small number of entry level jobs. Any idea how we could kind of remedy that, especially on the hiring side?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard. People want experienced. You're doing very difficult operations, especially in cyber. You're doing some really advanced things. I find this problem in incident response from my side is that it takes years to become an incident responder, years to understand forensically what this machine is doing and how is this network artifact and what should I do and how do I contain it and how I do all these things. So it takes that long time of training and experience to get to the point where a company is going to pay the $400, $500 an hour for you to go in there during an incident and do an investigation that has ramifications of millions. Could have been an insider threat job. It could be something that's going on to litigation. It could be ransomware. The entire environment is down. So there's a number of these different things. It makes it hard to say, hey, let me grab somebody who's brand new and throw them into this environment. It's like brand new surgeons. How do you get a brand new surgeon? Right? I mean, I'm assuming it's going to have to sit on a couple surgeries before they give them the knife. Obviously, they've probably had surgery on some cadavers before in training. But when do you actually put them on a live person? When do you do your first open heart surgery, so to speak? Well, it's difficult. How do you take these entry level people to do that because they can't actually execute and do any of the work? And I couldn't pass. You can probably some aspects of it to them. Go research this, go do that. But you can't just pass a case to them. And that's what everybody would want to do. They want to take this incident and pass this case to them, and it gets done, it gets closed, and you move on. So I don't like interns. I don't like the whole internship thing because it just makes you seem like you're low-end employee that's doing nothing and may get some college credit, and I have to put something together for your college to give you credit. But a part-time or a entry-level role, I think, is absolutely something that organizations should do more of and do more contract for the entry level. How do you get them into more jobs? I mean, first, I would definitely do some volunteering. If you're cybersecurity and you're entry level, I mean, check out your church. Do they need help with their computer systems? Do you have people you can volunteer? There's always these nonprofit places that need help and they need assistance. I think if you're passionate, just do it. Just get into those organizations, start doing that, getting some experience under you. I love active reader. The biggest green flag I see is an active reader, an active learner, someone who reads. I can ask you, what's your last 5 books you read? And they actually can tell you, and it's not a comic book. And the thinking is because in this field, in cyber, there's so much information you need to be able to synthesize and go through that you have to be a reader. If you're not going to synthesize it, you're not going to read it, and you're not going to be up to speed, and you'll never be senior level. So if you hate to read, don't join cybersecurity. Join something else. Well, when I find those people that don't like to read but they want to do this fancy stuff, that's when I think there's a mismatch. Because I want someone who will continue to learn on their own. I don't have to send them $3,000 training every 3 months. I don't have to say, when's the last training course you took? I just have to say, hey, your budget's $500 for books. I mean, don't buy any more than that. Why? Because they're eating them up left and right. They're reading them constantly. That's what cybersecurity companies are looking for. Someone that's just hugely adaptable, somebody that will just take the ball, because we'll have a partnership. You'll have like Microsoft come in and say, we need you to do Azure security responses. All right, great. Well, all of you have to be, for this partnership, Azure security engineer certified. Well, that means we got to go through the book. We got to go through the training. We got to take the exam. And it's like 10 of us that have to do that. Well, if you have some entry level guy that can't pick that material up, learn it, consume it, and allow us to deliver it, they're not going to be any good, right? To us. You might be really good at your job, but you can't consume new information, learn new information, and do this kind of work for us. So I think it's important. That's a big green flag as somebody who's a reader. I think another green flag is somebody who knows the industry. They know what the conferences are. They know who the top voices are in cybersecurity. It's obvious that they've researched this. It's obvious that they didn't just see some commercial in cybersecurity and decide, hey, this would be a great job. I can make money. But they've actually know the industry. They've invested some time in that. I think is always a critical aspect. But that, and then just the project management organization. I would always highlight that. I've worked with some people that are just terrible at organization and project management, and just they've caused nothing but chaos. And so I do think that highlighting that you can work within a team, be very productive, and get work done, I think is always critical. There is a generational problem I see that's kind of a red flag as well. Me being Gen X, I'm used to going work for a company. I've accepted their salary and their bonus and everything else at that point. And in 2 years, we'll see about a raise or promotion, because in those 2 years, I'm going to prove myself that I was the best candidate for you to hire me in the first place. I don't see that with millennials and others. I see a faster, hey, it's 6 months. When do I get promoted? When is my next promotion? Where is my path for career progression? They're asking companies for these big things that normally only the biggest companies have, like the Wells Fargos and the EYs. They have those kind of programs. But the smaller companies, they're hiring you to do your job so they can do their job and sell and do whatever it is that they do. They don't need somebody that every 6 months is going to ask for a promotion or some other thing, and it's just a needy employee. Well, what I find out is the millennials, the reason they think that way is almost because of LinkedIn. All these friends on LinkedIn are changing job positions and posting this, and they feel you got to keep up with the Kardashians, so to speak, and make sure your career is progressing on that LinkedIn. And so I see just a big disconnect on that. I mean, when they come to me in 6 months and they go, it's been 6 months, where's my promotion? What do I need? Like, what? The employment cycle and raises are once a year, not once every 6 months. So I see that disconnect of what expectations is once they get into a job. I think the first thing you should do is do your best to get to know everybody, be an asset to anyone, build a really good relationship, and so forth. So, I mean, those are some critical pieces I see. Some of the red flags, obviously, if you start talking about past criminal behavior, I do have a red flag where if you're constantly talking about different issues that may come up. Like I'm always going to the doctor here, and sometimes on Fridays I got to do this. And when you start adding all these complexities into the work relationship, people start to ask questions. Is this the right candidate? Seems like he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's helping his sick mother at the time. I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff to put on a recruiter. I would not share all those personal details unless it's relevant to the position and the role. And you need to make sure that it is, hey, I definitely got to take care of my mother-in-law at this time period here. And it is important to the role. I just think sometimes some people overshare, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do have another red flag is just the job hopping of changing jobs too often. Completely good reasons for doing that. You're in a contractor mentality and this is what you do. I just want an answer to it. If it is, you can't get along with people or you can't be successful or they didn't give you whatever you want about that. To me, that's a red flag. So if you have some negative thing about the last 3 employers that you have, I think there's more something negative about you than about the employers. What's the probability all 3 employers are horrible and you just happen to be abused at all 3? The same way I've seen in like these personality tests, they would ask you these questions. Is it common that people are blaming you for things that you didn't do? And this guy knows like, yeah, man, I'm always getting blamed for stuff I didn't do. No, wrong answer. Why do you think the employer asked that? Because if you are constantly thinking that other people are saying bad things about you or the wrong things about you, chances are it ain't them, it's you. And so those personality tests pull that out. And it's interesting to find out how some of these questions really reveal people in that. So I would not highlight any of those stuff. I'd be cautious about, your job history and your interactions. It's always great to say, if you can, that your past employers, it was great. I love those guys. We still hang out. I mean, it would be great if that was true. Because I think it gives a good feel to the recruiter that this person is stable, their delivery and their employment is generally stable and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're looking for is, at least a lot of what I look for is patterns. So we're pattern recognition machines as humans. So if we see the job hopping history is, 5 or 10 years long, that's one thing. that's possibly a red flag. Whereas, hey, if they lasted 6 months in their last 2 positions, had really good, reasons for both of those short-term positions, or maybe they were contracts. Okay, maybe not a red flag. So I think there's a lot of context involved in there. But you want to share enough to be transparent, I think, on both the hiring side as well as the candidate side. But like you said, not overshare. If there is some other negative aspect that, led to your leaving a previous company, don't expand on that too much. Keep it brief. Keep it relatively high level, then, quickly move on to the next thing and try to spin it, I guess, into more of a positive interaction or, to focus on the future and what you can contribute to the company.
And don't say something that makes it sound like you've completely exaggerated that. That doesn't even sound right. Then your integrity comes into play. They're like, well, they're exaggerating for this whole role. What else don't they know? So be careful on what you say in those aspects. And I would definitely show up for every interview on camera. Be prepared for that. Be early for that. Make sure you dressed properly for that and you account for the time of it. And I think those are all important aspects that go into the full package. So when you're interviewing for somebody or something, you have that kind of that full package,
For sure. Well, we're actually coming up on time here, Joshua. So I want to make sure I can ask you the one last question. Is there anything that we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
It's a good question. I don't know if there's anything we're systemically being missed. I do think framing is good. Recruiters sometimes definitely don't have all the operational understanding of what that role is. They more have the job description with a little bit more, maybe. So I think understanding the recruiters can understand the position a little bit better to be able to relay it. I think that would help for some of the candidates. But I'll be honest, I don't foresee, other than people really not focusing on their elevator pitch of who they are, what is important, what's not, on how to handle that interview. I think there's a lot of different training you can do that says how to interview for things. I was really lucky when I got out of the Marine Corps. They had this whole program for 6 months they put you through to get a job, and how do you do a resume, and how you do a cover letter, and how you do all this stuff. Well, I find that, yeah, that's all great and that's all helpful. But I've met many recruiters that say they've never read a cover letter before. They just don't read a lot of those things. So your question is, I would focus your training, instead of the best cover letter with every sentence properly written, I would concentrate more on the interviewing skills and the how do you come across and how do you speak and how do you do that? Because there's just so many people that are just not very good at that. You know?
Yeah, well, and to the job prospecting and networking and marketing piece, developing a presence for yourself to where you're a known entity. I think a lot of hiring decisions come down to risk aversion. Nobody wants to hire somebody that either they know nothing about or that they may view as a risky prospect in some way. And if you're highly visible and, people have a good understanding of who you are, you automatically reduce the idea of risk, in that hiring manager's mind. So great point. Well, people want to reach out to you.
I had one interesting there. I was on my podcast, Cybersecurity America, right? And I found out that the last job I was at, they interviewed me by watching the episodes on YouTube, right? And so they knew more about me than I realized. So I would always consider, if you're interviewed, put a video together, put a short video together introducing who you are and so forth. But yeah.
Yeah, and you can do quick stuff like that either actually in the app on LinkedIn or using a tool like Loom. I've discovered is a pretty cheap and quick way to do little videos like that. So, great point. If people want to reach out to you or find your podcast, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, you can always go to, I have a company website, so DarkStack7, that's what I use for my podcast and for my training videos that I do. You can always go to the Cybersecurity America YouTube channel, or we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on a number of different platforms, so you can always pick it up there, or just go to your Amazon app. It's on Amazon Music, and so you can pick up the show there. And the whole point of that is, trying to give back to the community, so be able to hear and be able to assist people. And this is a passion area, hiring. I have a lot of friends that are in that market now, and I want to do whatever I can to help them out. So.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for your time, Joshua. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.